Hey everyone, I got a lot of great news to get through this week, and I want to start by talking about big progress that we made on water issues for our community, also momentum that we're building on fighting against the Brightline project, defending our community from the Brightline project, and then I'll get to some other news of the week, including important bills that we passed to help veterans on the passage of the National Defense Authorization Act. First, we held a committee hearing in the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, what should probably be considered the most important bill for the water issues in our community. It's called the Water Resources and Development Act, and I say that it's probably the most important bill because this bill is what authorizes water projects across the country, water projects like the EAA Southern Storage Reservoir from Senator Negron's SB 10 bill, from the Kissimmee River Project, you name it, water projects across the country. This is the bill that authorizes them. It's why I asked to be placed on the Committee of Transportation and Infrastructure. Last year, I brought the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee Chairman, Bill Schuster. I brought down other members of our committee, Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, Secretary of the Interior, Ryan Zinke, all to the Treasure Coast to see our water issues firsthand. And this week we got some big news. Our pleas have been heard, and the chairman committed to including the authorization for the Southern Storage Water Reservoir into the Water Resources and Development Act. This is the issue that I've been working on since I got to Congress. It's the biggest issue that we work on here in my office, and it's the reason that I asked to be placed on the subcommittee of Water Resources and Environment to begin with, because that is the battleground for our fight for our water issues. There's no better place that I could be out there in Congress having that fight. Now, as I've mentioned before, we are waiting on the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to approve what's called a post-authorization change report as soon as possible, because we need it to actually authorize the reservoir. That's why I called in the Army Corps of Engineers last week and sat down with Chairman Schuster and the Water Resources and Environment Subcommittee Chairman Garrett Graves to impress upon them how important it is that this review be completed as fast as possible. You and I both know that we cannot afford more bureaucratic delays. We cannot afford to wait any longer on this project. That's why the three of us are calling on the Army Corps of Engineers to expedite their review so we can get that authorization in that bill, so that we can drop it in there in that placeholder that we put into this piece of legislation that we've been fighting for a long time. I also want to talk about a few other big wins that we scored in this Water Resources and Development Act for our local water issues. First of all, the Herbert Hoover Dike Rehabilitation Project is on track to be completed by 2022. Once that project is complete, it will have a significant positive impact on the flood control mission that the Army Corps of Engineers administers. The Lake Okeechobee Regulation Schedule, or the LORS schedule, determines when water must be discharged from the lake, based in large part due to the integrity of the Herbert Hoover Dike. The Lake Okeechobee Regulation Schedule, the LORS schedule, was last updated in 2008. Therefore, discharge decisions are still being based upon data that is over a decade old. Now, I wrote and passed an amendment for this bill, for that worded bill, that directs the Army Corps of Engineers to update the Lake Okeechobee Regulation Schedule starting in 2019 to ensure the most up-to-date flood control data is available upon completion of the dike in 2022, ensuring that discharges from Lake Okeechobee are only done when absolutely necessary, determined by the Corps of Engineers. Second, when harmful algal blooms are present in Lake Okeechobee and the Army Corps discharges water into our coastal estuaries, our coastal saltwater estuaries, the rate of flow is almost 11 billion gallons of toxic water to our community flooding into our rivers per day. Currently, there is no filtration system capable of sufficiently cleaning that water at that rate, that amount of flow of water. That's why I wrote and passed an amendment that authorizes a 5-year program for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Research and Development Center to identify and develop the technology for large-scale filtration of water, that quantity of water, 11 billion gallons a day. We get 4 million gallons a minute in many times. That's what we were working on there. So it includes early detection, prevention and management of harmful algal blooms. The amendment funds the program at $3 million per year, and it's what that group, ERDC is what they're called, it's what they said that they needed in order to go out there and develop the technology or test the technology to scale cleaning up algal blooms in that volume. Very important bill, and it was supported by folks around the country who also have major problems with algal issues. So it was a good amendment to get placed into that bill. Third, the lack of technical assistance that's made available to the South Florida Water Management District's work in establishing the post-authorization change report for that southern storage reservoir is one of the biggest challenges that has been brought about into getting that report from the Corps of Engineers for approval in a timely manner. Now, I wrote and passed a third amendment that directs the Army Corps to provide technical assistance to feasibility studies paid for by non-federal sponsors, expediting the completion of these studies and increasing the likelihood that the final report will be determined to be feasible. Now, I want to briefly talk about two more efforts that I've been championing that we got included into the bill. First of all, the St. Lucie Coastal Storm Risk Management Project. This provision authorizes a project in St. Lucie County to restore beaches that have been eroded by storms and establishes a maintenance plan to renourish the beach every 2 to 5 years. Second, the Kissimmee, River project. Under this provision, the state of Florida will receive credit towards the state 50% share towards the total project cost for the work that the state has already completed to restore the Kissimmee River to a more natural flow, reducing the negative impacts of Lake Okeechobee. It's another very important bill. A lot of people don't necessarily have eyes on it, but it's an important piece of legislation for our community. As this bill now moves forward, I'm going to be doing all I can to continue improving it and ensuring that our district is taken care of, including, most importantly, authorizing the Southern Storage Reservoir. And on another critically important local issue, we are also gaining important momentum to stop the Brightline expansion. So I want to talk about that also. As you may know, last month, at my urging, Congress held an oversight hearing into Brightline's use of taxpayer-subsidized financing called private activity bonds. Now, I believe that taxpayers deserve the truth about who is paying for Brightline, and our community also deserves answers about why they are refusing to address critical safety and economic concerns. Brightline's president, Patrick Goddard, didn't do himself any favors when he decided to call us on the Treasure Coast narrow-minded, saying that caring about our community's safety and the use of taxpayer dollars on a project that we'll never see any benefit for does not qualify us as narrow-minded, in my opinion. I think it's just the opposite. Now, we've got good news. Momentum is building in our effort to have the Department of Transportation revoke Brightline's allocation of these private activity bonds. I've been leading the fight with Congressman Bill Posey, and now we've added the support of Chairman Mark Meadows, Congressman Ron DeSantis, and Congressman Matt Gaetz. We wrote to the Department of Transportation officially urging them to suspend that bond allocation. These private activity bonds should not and cannot be used as a blank check by Brightline to get around the fact that they don't qualify for financing because they don't meet the requirements to be a high-speed railroad. Taxpayers absolutely should not be forced to bail them out, especially when our community isn't going to see any benefit from this project. Now, on to a few more important national issues from the week. Many of you have asked me about the news that I was being considered for Secretary of the Department of Veterans Affairs. This was definitely an honor to receive the recognition from President Trump on all of the great work that we have been doing to help our veterans and our community. As you may know, I still get my health care through the VA because I believe that if you want to fix a problem, you have to be there to be present for the problem. And I am the end user of the VA's work. I've seen it firsthand how still too often the government fails our veterans. We can and must do better. President Trump ended up nominating acting VA Secretary Robert Wilkie for the position. I've known him for quite some time and had the opportunity to sit down with him last week shortly before he was nominated to take over the job permanently. I'm optimistic about the future of veterans care in our country, in our county, in our area under the guidance under that guidance in the VA. In Congress, I'm going to be continuing our work for veterans This was my first week as a member of the House Veterans Affairs Committee, which is a great opportunity to work on veterans issues. Now, in this new role, I'll have an even louder voice to advocate for veterans in our community and veterans across the country, so I couldn't be happier about that third assignment to committees. As you know, I sit, as I already spoke about, on the Committee of Transportation and Infrastructure and a number of subcommittees there. I sit on the Committee of Foreign Affairs and a number of subcommittees there. So now to be placed on the Committee of Veterans Affairs, I couldn't be more proud about this opportunity to go out there and serve our veterans at that level, because improving care for our veterans, it starts with reforming the Department of Veterans Affairs and increasing oversight. Building on our passage of the VA Mission Act last week, the House passed more than a dozen bills this week to continue the momentum toward improving care. Included in these bills were efforts to relieve the financial burdens of veterans caused by the delays at the Department of Veterans Affairs, a bill to empower survivors of military sexual assault by allowing them to seek specialized care outside of the VA healthcare system, a bill to improve support for veterans battling opioid addiction, a bill to increase oversight of the VA's effort to modernize their health records, and a lot more. The full list you can visit if you want to see the full list, you can visit my website at www.mast.house.gov. Finally, this week we also passed the National Defense Authorization Act. This is a critical reauthorization of our nation's military programs, and I was proud to support it. The bill increases funding for our troop readiness and rebuilding our military. It includes a 2.6% pay raise for our troops, which is the largest in nearly a decade. It reforms the Pentagon to decrease bureaucracy and streamline the acquisition process, and it invests in missile defense and nuclear deterrence. Our nation owes the men and women that we ask to serve on the front lines the very best equipment, the very best training, the very best support. We're going to make sure that we provide it, and this bill is strong progress towards that. This weekend, I'll be around the district, and especially for Memorial Day, I'll be speaking at United Veterans of Port St. Lucie's Memorial Day service and paying my respects to a number of other events around the district as well. I hope to see you all there. I have to say, as we are right here on the heels of Memorial Day, it's a difficult time for a lot of us as veterans because of the way that we've seen flags folded over the caskets of our friends, because of the amount of times that we've heard taps played over the crying of family members because they're losing somebody that we served with, because of the amount of times that we've heard those 21 gun salutes, that very cold crack of that 21 salute being rendered over somebody that was about to be buried. It's a difficult time for us, and it is for me as well. So, over this Memorial Day weekend, I just want to say to you, Godspeed. And, if you're a veteran, thank you for the willingness to go out there and serve that country. And as you're going through this weekend and thinking about those friends that you've lost, who we honor, and their families that we think about and that we pay respects to, I just wish you, I wish you strength over that weekend, and I wish you peace as you're thinking about friends that have come and gone. And as always, if there's ever anybody that you need to speak to on that front, I'm just like you. I'm always one of those veterans that's willing to be there for you. If you ever need to have a conversation, you reach out to me, you reach out to my office, and we'll speak to you immediately, and we'll speak to you directly, and we'll make sure that we continue to be battle buddies for one another. In that, I hope you all have a great weekend, and I'll look forward to seeing you around.